Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Superheroes Movies and Superhero Movies. I'm John Pelzel.
I'm Justin Speck.
And today we are talking about Thor, The Dark World, which came out in 2013. It was directed by
Alan
Justin,
Taylor.
is the movie man. I'm going to have you just take over because you know these people.
Sure. It was directed by Alan Taylor and written by Christopher L. Yost, Christopher Marcus, Stephen McFeely, from a story by Don Payne and Robert Rodat. The interesting thing about that, by the way, well, actually, I'll talk about that in a second. Let me do the cast first. It was starring Chris Hemsworth, Natalie Portman, Tom Hiddleston, Christopher Eccleston, Jamie Alexander, Zachary Levi, Ray Stevenson, Idris Elba, Rene Russo, Kat Dennings, Stellan Skarsgård, and Anthony Hopkins. Ton of people in this movie.
That's why I was like, just take it, please.
It also has Adewale Akinnuoye Agbaje, which I think I mispronounced that, but that's the dude that played Killer Croc in Suicide Squad. There's actually two DC actors in this film, at least two. The other being Zachary Levi, who went on to play Shazam, which I think is kind of interesting. No, but what I was going to say about the writers, Robert Rodat has a story credit on this. Robert Rodat, and I'm assuming you pronounce it Rodat, but anyway, he wrote Saving Private Ryan. Interesting, wow. Interesting to see him have a story credit on a Marvel movie. Don Payne was a writer on the first Thor movie and apparently passed away in 2013. I noticed in the credits at this time that it was said, in memory of Don Payne or something like that. And I thought, oh, interesting. And then Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, they went on to write quite a few of the Marvel movies. They wrote Winter Soldier, Infinity War, and Endgame at least. And I think they may have written a couple other things.
Wow.
Yeah. They kind of became like the Marvel writers, it seemed like. So yeah, Thor: The Dark World, 8 years ago, released the same year as Man of Steel, which I don't remember it being that way, but I guess it was 2013.
Well, a little unknown fact that I was going to point out about you is your ability to. I think we brought it up once before. But your ability to not only play the Kevin Bacon game,
right,
but play the connect any two actors or actresses game.
Yeah, I feel like my memory has gotten worse as I've gotten older. I used to be able to recall.
That tends to happen.
Yeah, I used to be able to recall names and connections really, really well. And now it's gotten to the point where like I see somebody on TV and I'm like, I know that person, and like the name just does not come to me, and I have to look it up, which drives me nuts. But I would be curious. We haven't played the Kevin Bacon game in a really long time. It'd be fun to see how if I'm still good at it or not. Although I will say I was never really good at playing it and getting it in 6 connections, which is supposedly how you.
Oh, right, but you could still
But I could still make the connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a problem? Did you ever fail?
I'm sure I did, but I don't recall. I don't recall failing.
Yeah.
I think if you gave me enough time, I could figure it out. But I'm sure I did. I'm sure I was stumped, a couple times. But it is incredible how you can do, you can pick an old, Humphrey Bogart. You could make Humphrey Bogart fit to Kevin Bacon eventually. There used to be a website you could go to and you could type in an actor's name and it would do it, for you really fast, and they would make the connection. But it was also, I think it was whatever algorithm that person, whoever made that website, whatever algorithm they used was taking all the information from IMDb. So it would be like the most obscure actor name, that made the connection really, really, to make the connection short, to make it within 6 moves. It'd be some person you'd never even heard of was in some movie with Kevin Bacon, who was also in some movie with, whoever.
Right.
But Kevin Bacon is not in this movie, not in Thor: The Dark World. But
no, but he has been in technically a Marvel.
That's true.
Movie.
He has.
Anyway, let's. What were you saying?
No, nothing. I'm going to cut this out. I was going to say, I was sitting there trying to figure out has Christopher Eccleston been in a movie with Kevin Bacon? I was going to try to real quick make a connection, or something, but I didn't do it in time.
Your first thought was Kevin Bacon
Kevin
connection
Bacon.
to
How
who?
do I connect Kevin Bacon to Thor: The Dark World? He probably has been in a movie with Anthony Hopkins that I'm just not thinking of, but or Rene Russo or something, you know. But I don't know. Anyway, uh, did you see this one in the theater? Or did you skip this one?
Well, if I had seen it in the theater, I would have walked out because not because I didn't like it, but because I had not even seen this movie to completion until today.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. This is the first time I watched it since I saw it in the theater, which I always took as kind of a bad sign. I don't remember disliking it when I saw it in the theater. I remember thinking it was okay.
Hmm.
Um, but I never bothered to watch it again. And I actually have been meaning to rewatch it. I just knew we were going to eventually talk about it on the podcast, so I didn't really feel like rewatching
Yeah.
it twice.
I think I got at least, it would have been definitely at least, I might have almost gotten like three-fourths of the way through my first viewing.
Yeah.
I don't remember why I had to turn it off, but I just never put it back on. Um,
And that
and just
says something
never,
too.
and then Thor 3 came out,
Yeah.
and like I went and saw that in the theater.
Yeah.
And after that, I was just kind of like, I don't really feel like I need to go back and see Thor Dark
Sure.
World because I'm caught up now and there are
Right.
characters. Like, for instance, I hadn't seen Guardians Volume 2 when I saw Infinity War.
Right.
And I was like, who is this person with the antennas? It's like one of
Right.
the first shots, isn't it? She was very early in there. I remember like seeing her, and I didn't think like, I don't know why I didn't think, oh, I don't know who this is. Maybe they were in Guardians too. I just was like, okay, maybe this is a waitress or like a stewardess, and and then she turned out to be
This is a weird way
one of
to
the main.
introduce this character.
Anyway,
That's funny.
way off track.
Well, the whole point of that was I just, my initial reaction to the movie was that it wasn't bad, but it also, it didn't leave like didn't really like wow me, I guess you could say, when I left the theater. I will say, watching it this time around, I remember laughing a lot more in the theater than I did tonight when I rewatched it. There's one joke in particular where I was like almost kind of excited to see again because I remember laughing at it in the theater. And I'll just tell you what it is. It's when it's towards the end of the film when there's a lot of kind of teleporting happening. They keep kind of getting trapped in these
Right.
weird bubbles, and they keep getting thrown to like the dark world, back to Earth, back to the dark world. And at one point, Thor ends up in the subway, and he asks somebody, what's the fastest way to get to Greenwich or something? They go, this train 3 stops down, and he just gets on the train and grabs hold of the handle. And for some reason, that really cracked me up in the theater. And watching it tonight, I was like, there wasn't really anything funny about that. Why did I laugh so hard at that? But I was like looking forward to that scene. And then when it came, I was like, oh, okay.
I wonder if the theater was like erupting with
It
laughter.
it
and
must
that
have been. Because I'm sure I saw this
made
like
you
opening
laugh.
night, and so maybe maybe the crowd was just was a good crowd, and I just laughed at certain things in the movie. But yeah, for some reason that joke didn't land this time around, I guess, like it did the first time.
Yeah. I don't really remember laughing at all, really. Even internally. But I don't necessarily feel like felt like anything was forced humor.
Right.
So even if there was, those moments where they were trying to make you laugh, it didn't feel like it didn't take me out of the movie,
Right.
which is hard to do. So
I think there was 1 or 2 times where I kind of chuckled. And of course, I'm not going to be able to remember what the specific moment was. I know one of them was with Darcy, and she said Mew Mew again right as the hammer's going by. She's like, Mew Mew, and that kind of made me laugh a little bit. But
you're right. I can't remember any of the parts, but I do remember hearing some distant things that were like almost like catch me's
right, yeah.
that were funny. So,
But yeah,
but
but even
it
though I
didn't
just watched
overdo.
it tonight, I can't think of an example.
Right.
It's pretty bad, I guess.
So with that being said, this movie is kind of what it says it is. the Dark World. This is a darker Thor movie.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and what did you think of the story?
I thought it was okay. Um, I like the dark elves, but I also don't feel like they were really given. I don't know. There's. I feel like the villains in the movie are a little weak. And they basically. I feel like the whole story of the movie is setting up for Infinity War and the Infinity Stones and all that stuff. I mean, the whole plot of the movie focuses around the ether, which ends up being one of the Infinity Stones, and just I don't know. I just thought it was kind of okay. It didn't really do a whole lot for me, I guess.
I totally agree. I
Yeah.
mean, it felt very flat,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like you mentioned. I didn't think about the Dark Elves. Like I liked them too, but when you mentioned, I don't remember what as you said, but like basically, it's like they put all of their effort into these like into the enemy as into their appearance because
Right.
they're really cool looking.
They are cool looking.
And obviously inspired by the Lord of the Rings style universe. Like we have a Marvel, almost like, medieval movie here
Yeah, I do remember
in
thinking that as
parts.
I was watching. I was like, this is kind of Marvel's fantasy film,
Yes.
which is cool.
And you don't get that in Thor 1.
Right.
You don't get that in Thor 3 either. So this is kind of the only movie that did that. And I thought it was kind of interesting to see because like I said, didn't remember that. And it was just, like you said, their fantasy movie. And I was like, very cool that Marvel kind of has all these different genres.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even think about Thor having the fantasy one, but um, yeah, the story is, it's kind of hard to explain, but it feels like something's missing. Like I, there's not that soul in it, I guess,
Right.
so to speak. You have the traditional story of, you have a threat of villains coming and the hero has to stop them. And though that was all there really was in Thor, and I remember mentioning that, how the first Thor was a very simple story with just this gigantic robot that he has to stop
Right.
from,
Yeah.
but it was really well done. They took a simple idea and blew it up and made it spectacular.
Right.
This took what seemed like they were trying to do a bigger concept and just they really couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
That's how I saw it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the main story I think in the first film focused more on Thor and his character arc. Because in the beginning of Thor, he's very arrogant and ends up getting kicked out of Asgard, and so he has to kind of learn how to be Thor essentially, and that's like the big main story of the film. And then he does have the bad guy, and Loki's kind of behind that, pulling the strings and stuff. And in this film, yeah, it just feels very one note. It's the ether and the dark elves, and we got to stop them, and that's it. That's it. And there is a little bit with Loki, and I would say that's probably my favorite parts of the movie is the stuff that kind of deals with Loki.
Right.
And Malekith, I think, is a cool villain, and I think Christopher Eccleston is a really great actor. But I feel like he's forgettable.
Yeah, he is.
I completely forgot that he like burned his face and had like half of his face dark, which I think might be how he kind of looks in the comics. He might.
So actually, after watching this, pulled him up and
Yeah.
looked him up, and yeah, he's actually um dramatically different. He's actually almost looks like face paint on one side. It's like white and like black, I think,
Right. Yeah.
and it's like Two-Face.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he has that sun, which that's what actually made me look him up because I did notice he had like that star design in his
Mm-hmm.
chest. And I was like, I wonder if that's like on his costume. And I was like, I wonder what he looks like. So I looked him up and his costume's kind of like that too. It's like one side. It's like he's got like this weird funky hair.
Mm-hmm.
He was way more colorful, just not just literally, but
Right.
just
More
anyway.
interesting looking, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, almost to the point where obviously they were like, "Can we put this on film?" No.
Right.
It'd be like trying to create Electro with
with his mask.
which I wanted to see so
I
bad.
know you do.
But how can you?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I thought, like, I think Malekith is a cool villain, but in this movie, he just, I don't know. He also comes across as a bit 2D, a bit one
Yes.
note.
Like an android almost.
Yeah, yeah. He doesn't stand out at all in terms of like Marvel villains and stuff like that. I don't think, he wakes up when the ether is kind of discovered by Jane, and he wakes up, he's like, the ether has woken us up and we need to go get the ether, and it's just, I don't know, it's just it's lacking, like you said. I think there's something missing there.
Yeah. The best way I can put it is soul.
Yeah.
It's missing soul.
Which is crazy because like I said, all the writers are really good who had a hand in the movie.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Right. No.
It's just, especially after
But compared to other Marvel
everything,
movies, yeah.
yes, exactly. You're like, this is like we were saying, missing something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm curious if it's if that falls on the writers or if it falls on the directors or what, because
could be anything.
it could be, yeah. The director, Alan Taylor, he's directed episodes of Game of Thrones, your favorite show there, but then he also went on to direct Terminator Genesis, which was not super great.
I don't think I've seen that one.
You might not.
That's the one with
Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I've not seen that one.
So I don't really know. Like, he obviously, I'm sure, I don't know what episodes he directed of Game of Thrones. I could look it up, but I'm sure he did pretty decent episodes. So maybe he's just better at directing television than he is at directing feature films. I don't know. But there were a couple times where I felt that the writing was not super great either.
It's not necessarily the director's fault either.
Right.
I mean, you also have people that are above you, that are
the studio and all that.
You have no idea. So it could have been the director. It could have been the writers. It could have been both. It could have been
studio,
all kinds of things.
Yeah, interference, whatever. There's a couple scenes with there's one scene in particular that I feel like just felt maybe a little forced between Thor and Loki.
Mm-hmm.
I think Chris Hemsworth is a really good actor, but this scene in particular, I felt it didn't feel true, I guess you could say. They were arguing about something, and Chris Hemsworth is having to act angry, and it just seemed like he was pretending. It didn't feel like the real kind of emotion was there behind.
Right.
And I didn't know if that was, again, could be a number of things. Could be the writing, could be the directing, could be maybe Chris Hemsworth was sick that day. You never know. But like, it just didn't connect, I think, with. So there's a couple of moments like that in the movie, but there's one in particular. I forget exactly which scene it is, but it was. Oh, it was when it's shortly after Loki has been released, and they're arguing about, Loki not being there during Frigga's death, and he's like, "Well, who put me in jail?" And Chris Hemsworth gets all in his face, and he's like, you know who.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That just didn't. It didn't feel real to me. It didn't feel true, I guess is the best way I can put it. But yeah, there are a couple things I forgot completely. I forgot Frigga dies in this movie. Spoiler alert. And I think that.
So explain to me. Speaking of which,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, continue with that because I want to hear what you have to say.
Well,
I
feel like that is a testament to kind of how. I mean, I'm kind of knocking this movie, but I don't hate it. I don't think it's necessarily a bad movie. Right. But when you compare it again, especially to other Marvel movies, it doesn't hold up. And I think that the fact that I completely forgot that Thor's mom dies in this movie is a testament to kind of how forgettable this movie kind of is.
Yep. Did you remember that? Well, it turns out not to be right, but like I remember when I saw his hand got like cut off.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that too.
Yeah. But then I mean, I can see how you could forget about it because once again, it wasn't
fake.
Real. But
right.
I liked that little gimmick there. I thought that was because I really thought Loki was turning.
Yeah, me too. I forgot that it was a deception. And I knew that there was something going on because Thor obviously has two hands in the future movies. So I knew something was going on, but I couldn't remember what it was, and so it was
Isn't there
nice to.
there's a superhero that gets a hook hand, isn't there?
Well, Aquaman got his hand cut off for a
That's
while, and he
right.
had a hook hand, and then
That's right.
eventually had a water hand, which was interesting too, in the comics. Yeah,
I did, but yeah, I remembered someone, and yeah, you're right. It was Aquaman. That's who I'm thinking of. Interesting concept. Make it, kind of like, I guess, pirate
yeah,
related.
yeah, yeah. He looked kind of cool. I think he had a hook hand on like the animated Justice League show. I think they kind of had him have like
I
he had.
didn't really watch that too much.
I didn't
Did
either. I
you?
actually have it on DVD, and I've bought the digital versions of it in HD, and so I've been meaning to watch it. I've seen episodes here and there, but I've never sat down and like watched it from first episode to last episode, and I really have wanted to, and I just haven't had. I've just
Did
had
you ever watch the Green Lantern series?
episodes of it, but not the whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought it was good.
yeah,
I mean, it was definitely geared towards kids, but
sure.
it was cool. It introduces like pretty much all the different,
Different lanterns and stuff. Yeah,
yes, by within the first season, because there was only one.
right. I remember Red Lanterns were real big in the first few episodes that I was watching. I
Yeah,
believe
they're like, I think they're actually the first things you even see,
they might
like the
be.
first image that there is.
Yeah, I didn't take very many notes for this movie, to be honest with you, because I
I
felt
took
like there
one.
really, really, I felt like there weren't a whole lot of noteworthy things that really happened. I mean, and most of them are like very simple notes. The first note I wrote is I like how Thor leaves Darcy and Ian to be arrested because Thor shows up after Jane discovers the ether because I guess she gets teleported to the dark world, I assume, that area where like the shoes and the car keys go and everything. And the ether consumes her kind of, or she consumes the ether perhaps, I don't know. And because Heimdall can't see her, he travels to Earth to make sure she's okay. And they're about to be like arrested by the police, and he's like, "I'm taking her back to Asgard," and just leave Darcy and Ian there. So I kind of half expected to see the next time we saw Darcy and Ian for them to be like in jail,
Uh-huh.
but that wasn't the case. But I thought that was kind of funny. He's like, "Screw you guys, I'm taking her to Asgard."
The only note I wrote down was Frigga out like outdoes Malekith in battle.
Right.
And I was like, it just doesn't, like, he's supposed to be like the general, right, of the
Yeah.
dark elves,
Yeah.
and the queen outdoes, like, I'm sorry. I appreciate, uh promoting the strength of females, but that one I don't know. I didn't buy that one.
I can see
I
that.
could, I could see her being quick, them showing her being quick, but he should have been able to take
Right.
down pretty much anyone very quickly.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about it when I was watching it. I just kind of thought,
Because it shows that, like, if who's that other guy that shows up? The like his like side.
I don't know the name of that character, but the guy
Yeah.
the guy that puts the mask on and becomes
Is he a dark elf?
he was originally a dark elf, and then he goes on that mission and wears the mask and does something and kind of transforms into that monster.
Right. So, but they were in the jail.
He infiltrated the jail. Like there was like a transport of prisoners to Asgard, and he was on that transport.
I thought he was in. That's okay. So I thought he was one of the guys that got out, but that's what it was. Okay. I was looking.
He was
away,
sent there by
or eating
Malekith.
pizza or something.
Yeah, you
And then
look
I saw
down.
him.
Yeah.
And then I saw him look at Loki, and I was like, I was like thinking that he was like one of the aliens that was like across from him or whatever.
Right.
So, but
Yeah, after like he and Malekith talk, about his mission or something, or I don't remember exactly, but they bring him a helmet, and then the next time we see that helmet, it's him like walking off the transport of prisoners. He's like among the transport of prisoners, and goes into the cell, and he activates the bomb thing, and then breaks out. Yeah,
Gotcha.
so I don't know exactly what happened to him. I don't know, but he transforms himself somehow into kind of a monster like being.
Right. But anyway, I was gonna say if it hadn't been for him, then Frigga would have beaten Malekith right there,
Yeah.
because she was like holding the knife, and then dude comes, That's what I'm gonna call him,
Dude.
dude.
Yeah, sure. That works.
Um, so that was the only note I wrote.
Yeah. I liked Frigga's death scene. I like how when she gets killed, you hear Thor yell no, and then he
Yes,
comes running
I
in and
agree.
throws the hammer, and that's what
And
creates Malekith's half
right,
face.
so that's how they decided to create that. I felt like I said, I like the design of the Dark Elves, but I'm trying to remember what they remind me of. Um, there was something I thought of when I was watching it, but I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I think it would have been really cool to see what they maybe could have created if they had tried to go a little bit more traditional,
Yeah, yeah.
Just, I don't know. It would have given him more life too.
Sure, probably.
He's very just almost Darth Maul like,
Mm-hmm.
Unless I'm not remembering. Like, did he have a lot of lines?
Not really.
I
The
didn't
for
think
the
so.
for the first half of the movie, all of his lines are in Dark Elvish or whatever, and then it's not until they get to Asgard, I believe, that he starts speaking English. But I mean, most of his lines are really short, and they're just
Yeah, threatening.
threatening. Yeah, they're not. There's no character development for him at all.
Right.
We just know that Odin gives a kind of a backstory speech about the Dark Elves and how they want to turn the Nine Realms to darkness. But other than that, we don't really know anything about the Dark Elves or why they're doing what they are doing, and they could have made him a bigger, more fleshed out character, I think.
You brought up Odin. Let's talk about Anthony Hopkins. Like,
Sure.
he's got a decent amount of screen time in this movie.
He does. He's a more fleshed out. I mean, granted, we saw him in the first movie, but he's a more fleshed out character than Malekith for sure.
But do you think he was in this one more than the first one, or am I?
I think he is, because the first one there was so much more of Thor on Earth.
Right.
I think that he is in this movie more, but I could be wrong. It might be about the same, but it felt like he was kind of in the movie more.
Anyway, I loved Anthony Hopkins' performance. I thought he did great.
He's fantastic. He's a great Odin, I think.
Yeah.
So, speaking of casting, in this film as Fandral, we have Zachary Levi. Zachary Levi was not in the first Thor. There was a different actor that played Fandral, and I think I remember reading somewhere that they originally wanted Zachary Levi in the first Thor, but he was unavailable. And then when he was available and for this movie, they decided to bring him in rather than recast, or rather than bringing back the first guy. Sucks for that first actor. But I remember thinking at the same time it was a small role for Zachary Levi too. I mean, he brought a little bit of comedy to it as much as he could for the few lines he had, but yeah, just thought that was kind of interesting that Zachary Levi, they wanted him to play the role and couldn't do it the first time. Then he's in it, and he's in it for this movie, but it's such a small role. I don't know. He's doing well now playing Shazam though. So Marvel did such a good job casting certain characters, and Tom Hiddleston as Loki is definitely one of them. They did a fantastic job of casting Chris Hemsworth as Thor. He's pretty perfect as Thor too, but Tom Hiddleston he always kind of steals the show. And he does that in this movie, I think. Most of my favorite scenes in this movie are Loki scenes.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he does a fantastic job. I'll tell you my favorite scene with Loki, and maybe it might be my favorite moment in the movie, is when we don't hear anything. There's no dialogue, but somebody comes to Loki's cell. It's like a guard, and informs him that his mother has been killed.
Right.
And he just nods at the guy like, okay, I heard you, thanks. And the guard walks away. And Loki stands up, and you think like, oh, he's taking this really well. And then he just kind of like flexes his arms, and all the furniture gets sent away. And I really like that. And then on top of that, Thor comes to visit him, and he seems fine. And he's like, are you here to gloat? Or he's like, and Thor sees through it, and he's like, enough of the illusions. And the illusion goes away, and his whole room is destroyed.
Yeah.
And he's leaning against the wall, and he looks destroyed. You know what I mean? And
he's just an absolute mess.
Yeah. I love
it. Was that blood or berries on his foot? Because like I thought I saw smashed berries, but there was like this red stuff. I was like, I don't know. It was
interesting. I didn't notice that, but it could be either or, I guess.
Yeah, it was. I think they wanted you to, just maybe automatically think, but maybe they put the berries there in case they were like the
Can't
moms
have
that are
the
gonna complain
violence.
will be like, it's berries.
Right. It was just
It's not
berries.
blood.
It's not blood. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I love those moments with him. I think they're really good. And I'm like, he's got more. Again, we know Loki. He was in. This is the third movie we've seen Loki in because he was the bad guy in Avengers. But he's got way more depth than the villain in the movie. You see so much more. I don't know. Depth is the only word
And
I can
maybe
think of.
that's
But
what the problem was. Maybe all of their writing for the villain went to
went to
Loki, even
Loki
though
rather
he's
than the
not
actual
the
villain.
villain, but he is the
I'm
anti-hero.
sure he was the more interesting character to write.
Oh, I'm sure they definitely wrote more. Yeah,
Yeah,
obviously they definitely, regardless, spent more time developing Loki's character
for
in this
sure.
movie
Yeah.
than.
And I mean, the other scene I really love is when he's like, right after Thor has broken him out of the cell, and he's just taunting Thor, turning into the different people. He turns Thor into Lady Sif, and then he turns into Captain America. I love that part. And he's like,
Yeah,
he's like,
I can.
this is
I
tight. It's tight
I can
costume.
only imagine, since I didn't see it in the theater, and obviously this is after the conclusion of the whole thing. So what that would have been like to see it in the theater, just because you had Captain America once before with
Twice now. Well,
Thor.
3 times, I guess, because we had Captain America, Avengers, and then I think Winter Soldier came out before this. I could be wrong. Might have that
No,
backwards.
I mean with Thor.
Oh,
This was
gotcha.
the
Yes, the
second
one
time
time.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, just to rekindle that excitement in the audience,
Oh, sure.
I can imagine on opening night that.
I'm pretty sure it got a pretty big laugh. I remember everybody kind of laughing at that pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I mean, I really like that a lot. I think, and and I like that everybody is threatening to kill him. That's actually a line that I thought worked pretty well. Was Ray Stevenson's character, whose name I can't remember, is the last person to say it. He's like, if you betray him, he's like, what? You'll kill me? And he's like, evidently there will be a long line. And I thought that was a pretty good little line. And then, that I think makes the scene, even though we find out that it's fake, the scene where he betrays Thor, you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe he's actually doing it. And then you find out that he's, it was planned, and you feel a lot better about it until you find out that he fakes his own death and tries to take over the throne of Asgard,
But
or
what's
does take
cool?
over the throne of Asgard.
Yeah, exactly. So does it, you just see him appear there?
You see him at the end is sitting on the
Right.
throne, and he's happy because Thor doesn't want the throne, so that makes
Right.
Loki's got it. And then the next time we see him is at the beginning of Thor Ragnarok, and he is pretending to be Odin.
Yeah, I've only seen Ragnarok once, and it was in the theater. So
You should watch it again. It's
a good movie. I remember really liking Ragnarok.
I think it's if I were to rate the Marvel movies, Avengers Endgame I think is my number one favorite Marvel movie, and then Avengers is my second favorite, and then Ragnarok I think is my third. I really liked Ragnarok a lot.
It was the music was
score,
fantastic.
yeah, the music was amazing.
It's the planet, basically the Planet Hulk
Mm-hmm.
storyline, which I love that story. Because I watched the animated version,
Yeah.
when they first put it on Netflix, and I was like,
Actually,
that's
speaking of that, in the beginning of the film, did you recognize the rock creature that shows up to fight Thor?
I was thinking it was like, what's his name?
Korg, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I'm pretty sure it is Korg. Because I don't.
I think he's a bigger version. I don't think Korg was that big.
Right. I don't think Korg was that tall either. But I think the design of him, was how Korg looked in the comics, and I think at the time maybe they weren't thinking that they were ever going to do a Planet Hulk storyline, and so they had this guy kind of, because I remember reading when Ragnarok was coming out that Korg was going to be in Ragnarok, and they were like, well, didn't we already see Korg in Thor: The Dark World? But he's never mentioned. They don't ever say his name
Right,
or anything
they
like that. So I don't
Well,
really know if
I
there was
mean-
any real confirmation of it actually being Korg.
Well, I was gonna say, obviously, you would assume that there are that whatever
Yeah.
Korg is a race, and
Right.
that this could have just been the race that Korg is. What regardless, it was cool. I liked that part where he comes walking up. He's and then just one hit like Indiana Jones style.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And then anyone else?
Yeah, and then they just bow down.
Right. So we've talked about Chris Hemsworth as Thor and Tom Hiddleston as Loki and Anthony Hopkins as Odin. But what about Natalie Portman as Jane Foster?
Great job. I'm a big Natalie Portman fan, so
Another fantastic actress, of course, with that, but I also feel like just doesn't have a whole lot to do
right.
in this movie.
But I think what she does with what she has is good.
I agree. Yes, I don't think Natalie Portman, gives a bad performance by any means, and I think
One of the things I think Natalie Portman does really well is facial acting.
Yeah,
She has a lot of like emotion in her face, and you can just kind of see it easily. And I think in her, at least I can. So,
yeah,
or I think I can. I don't know.
yeah.
But kudos to her for that.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, she doesn't have a whole lot to do. The ether gets put inside of her, and then
right,
she's just kind of there for the ride, waiting for this.
And then
stuff
one
to get
last
out.
kiss.
Yeah, of course.
For Thor
Yeah.
after and mid credit sequence.
Right. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
was
End
that-
credit sequence.
That was
yeah.
the end. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
She will be back. She was not in Thor Ragnarok, but she will be back for Thor 4, Thor Love and Thunder. So I expect to see some great things from Natalie Portman in that film.
Hopefully that is a really good movie.
Oh, yeah, I hope so, too. I'm sure it will be. It's the same director as Ragnarok, so I'm sure it'll be good. I wrote kind of a weak cameo for Stan Lee. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't terrible by any means. It was a cameo.
I liked it.
Did you?
It wasn't necessarily like a, deep chuckle or anything, but I kind of liked his cameos when they were more subtle.
I gotcha.
Like,
Okay.
and this one even, I mean, he has a speaking line in Spider-Man stuff, but yeah, I like the more subtle. I obviously everyone started noticing, so it became a big thing to have,
Right.
to really focus on what's the Stan Lee cameo going to be. And I didn't mind those. Usually there were a couple I didn't like, but I think the more subtle ones I felt like were, I don't know, just.
I didn't realize how I miss it.
Right, they're over.
Yeah, Black Widow obviously doesn't have a Stan Lee cameo, and
yeah,
so none of the Marvel movies from here on out are going to have a Stan Lee cameo, and so yeah, rewatching these older films and seeing Stan Lee, you're like, oh man,
and it's really cool. I don't think it's really spoiling anything. If someone hasn't seen Endgame, then anyway, I was gonna say I thought it was really cool that they were able to get that last cameo in for Endgame, even though it was my least favorite cameo.
Right.
Pretty sure, but it was cool that he was able to be in the last.
Yeah. Was he in Spider-Man: Far From Home? I don't think he was he? I don't remember.
I don't remember either. It seems like he might have been.
He might have been. So maybe that was the last one.
But even so, like, Endgame was the wrap up of the main story.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It still almost bothers me that Spider-Man Far From Home is considered the last movie of Phase 3. You're like, why?
No,
like, it should be,
I'm sorry.
It should be Endgame. Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely Endgame. I mean, you can say it's whatever, but.
Right. But Endgame is the end of Phase 3. Yeah, that's how I look at it, too. I mean, you have to. It's such a big... Yeah, I don't know.
And why wouldn't you want Spider-Man Far From Home to be the kickoff of Phase 4?
Right, exactly.
That makes sense.
No, yeah, I agree. It doesn't make sense. I also wrote a note that Thor trying to... This is kind of the stupid note. Thor trying to get the ship working, so like he breaks Thor out... Or I'm sorry, he breaks Loki out of jail, and they go to one of the Dark Elves ships that was crashed on Asgard, and he's just hitting buttons, and Thor's kind of... I keep saying Thor. Loki is giving him a hard time, and he starts kind of getting frustrated. And I wrote, Thor trying to get the ship working is like me when my computer isn't working. Because he's like, I'm hitting every button. It's not doing anything. I was like, hey, that's like me when my computer's giving me grief.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't like that part though, because I thought they could have done something more creative than just him getting frustrated, hitting
Hitting
buttons, and
something and then
then
it coming
getting
to
it to
life.
work. And
Yeah.
then he's like a ace pilot at it at that
Right.
point. I
Even
mean,
though
he's decapitating things,
he's
but
hitting things, but he's still flying it
he is
really well.
spinning, and
Yes.
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yes, I agree. I think I thought it was interesting that they did that. They had him like hitting everything, but still doing the spin moves and flying it super well.
I did like the line though where he asks who can actually fly.
Right? Yeah,
That
that
was
was good.
such a rub in Loki's face. It was
Yeah,
great.
I'm sorry. Out of the two of us, who can actually fly? I also liked when he kicks Loki out the door because I forgot about that whole thing. I actually remember when I was watching it, I was like, I could have sworn they were flying on something that was like open, not an enclosed kind of like spaceship type thing. I was like, maybe my memory's wrong. And then he kicks Loki out the door, and I went, "Oh, okay." But then of course, they land on that little ship that
Right.
Zachary Levi's got, and so I was like, "Oh,
No, that
this
took
is
me
what I'm
off guard
remembering."
too, because like it doesn't really show you that there's anything open, does it? And then like until he pushes them,
Right?
and
Yeah.
then you're like,
You
oh,
didn't know
there's
there
an
was an
open.
open door there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of. It definitely threw me off for a
It
second.
was a little weird. Yeah. And then the very last note I wrote has to do with Eric Selvig. So Eric Selvig, who Loki had under mind control in the Avengers, I guess that had an effect on him, and he has kind of gone a little crazy and
Right. Kind of Louis Tully.
right.
If you
Yes.
will.
Yeah. And so he is in a psychiatric ward, and Darcy and her intern Ian go to get him out, and they just say that their name. I guess he just says his name is something Selvig. He's Dr. Selvig's son. And I wrote, no ID needed to sign out a psychiatric patient. You could just say what your name is and they'll give him to you. No problem. No questions asked.
I thought that too, and I was like, maybe they were just like really ready to get rid of him.
Maybe. They're like, oh, thank God. Somebody's here to take him off our hands. Yeah, I thought that was weird. Okay, no ID needed for that. The final act of the movie where kind of takes place all in London, and there's I like the visuals of it, but again, it's just I don't know. There's something that feels a little not cheap necessarily, but Selvig has these poles that can create kind of those teleportation spots, and so when they activate it, they can teleport. Like Natalie Portman activates it a couple times and sends some of the Dark Elves to the Dark World or something. And I remember thinking like, that's convenient, that he's got like this technology that has access to these portals and stuff. I don't know. Didn't really dig that too much.
Yeah, the portal stuff was, like you said, convenient. That's a good way to put it. Where did the technology come from again?
I don't know if it was something that was in his head from Loki's brainwashing, or what, but it was just like he had those poles. He had kind of figured out the technology and had them, but everybody thought he was crazy. And so I don't know if they really explain it other than he's just a genius and figured this out.
Right. Once again, an example of how this just kind of wanted you to, I don't know, create your own story maybe to some degree. It's like put the pieces together yourself.
Yeah, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's clearly one of those things where they needed Selvig and Jane and Darcy to kind of do something at the end to help Thor, and so they kind of came up with this thing. But it just, I don't know, it just didn't work for me. Exactly. I did like it when, and I just watched this movie and I can't even think about how Thor and Jane get to this place. But at one point, or maybe this is even before the London stuff. Oh, it is before the London stuff. Never mind. But I was gonna say I like that Thor and Jane kind of stumble upon the location of where some of those items have gone. So in the beginning of the movie, when Jane kind of first finds this weird abnormality location, these kids show them that like they drop a bottle and it comes out of a portal up top and kind of has this infinite
Right.
loop thing. But then they drop something else and it disappears. And she's like, and this little kid's like, sometimes that stuff comes back, sometimes it doesn't. And so I like that Jane and Thor stumble upon this location. You see like the Coke can and the shoes and the the car keys. And that was actually a line I did chuckle at, was when Thor goes, "Why are there so many shoes here?" You know?
Right. Which leads you back to Dorsey and
Ian.
And knowing that she took all of their
she
shoes.
did take their shoes, yeah.
Did they ever make a reference that they were missing their shoes?
No,
that
I
would
don't
have been
think
hilarious.
they did, but that would have been pretty good.
If they were like running through the street in bare feet and they're like scraping their feet, like, I wish I had my shoes. Something.
Right.
I don't know. But well, I was gonna say something else too. It was when Natalie Portman, what's her name?
Jane Foster.
Yes, Jane Foster. Of course, because they call her Jane Foster, which I love. In Asgard.
In Asgard, yeah, they never just refer to her as Jane. It's always Jane Foster.
Jane Foster.
Yeah.
But when she's in that like the place where the ether is, I was thinking it would have been cool if like, because she was like trying to figure out when she was going around it, if she had like stepped on something, looked down, and it was like the keys.
Mm-hmm.
But then they did make reference to it later. So anyway, thought that was cool.
What'd you think of the music in the movie? Not memorable?
I don't think so.
I kind of like the music in the movie. I thought the score was pretty decent. Brian Tyler was the composer for this one.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I find interesting about some of these Marvel movies that have, like Iron Man, for example, the Iron Man trilogy, even though Jon Favreau was the director for the first two, I think there's a different composer for each film. And that's kind of how it was with this movie. The first movie was directed by Kenneth Branagh, and Patrick Doyle was the composer. And then this movie has Brian Tyler.
Kenneth Branagh directed the first one?
Kenneth Branagh directed Thor 1.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
He's cool.
Have we not talked about Thor 1 on the podcast? Are we doing this backwards?
But I guess I forgot.
Okay.
It's been a while since we talked about Thor.
No worries. Yeah, it has been. I thought about that today, though. I couldn't remember if we had done the first one, and I was like, are we going back? Because I know we've done Ragnarok, and so now we're doing the Dark World, and I was like, do we need to do Thor 1 now? Anyway, so different composer, Brian Tyler this time around. So different themes. I don't think he reused any of the themes that Patrick Doyle used.
Mm-hmm.
And I like those themes in the first film. But I like the score in this movie. I think he did a pretty good job. I think it stands out.
That's something I don't do as much as you do, is like, listen for the score, which I should, because I'm a big music lover, but I just don't really think about it. And it's not unless a theme stands out so much to me that I would even mention
like an iconic theme.
Yeah. So like I would be curious to go back and listen to it now, just thinking about it, but I'd need to remember to do that, especially watching superhero movies.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
So
well, I guess we've kind of covered most of the film, I think. So let's talk about the post-credit scene, which was a big deal at the time. Now is not as big of a deal. But we see Lady Sif and Ray Stevenson's character, who I did figure out what his name was. It's Volstagg. They show up at this weird location. We're not really sure what's going on at first, but we find out it's Benicio del Toro's character from Guardians of the Galaxy. He's playing the Collector, and they give him the ether. And that's the first time we kind of hear it referred to as an Infinity Stone, I think, or at least, the actual word Infinity Stone. Because the Collector asks them, why don't you just keep this in the vault at Asgard? And they say they've already got the Tesseract, and it's not wise to keep two Infinity Stones close together. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then that scene ends with the Collector saying 1 down, 5 to go, which is interesting because it makes you think that he's like maybe working for Thanos, which, as we find out later, is really not the case at all. I guess he was just thinking maybe he wanted to collect all 5. Or 6.
It's an interesting,
or whatever.
It's an interesting statement to say when he's not getting them for Thanos.
Right? Yeah. Right. It was just another little nod towards, hey, we're working towards Infinity War.
Or maybe that was the original intent.
Was to have Collector be working for Thanos? Maybe. Could be, I guess. I would be surprised. I mean, they change things as they go throughout the movies, here and there. So that might have been the case originally. And then the post-credit scene is something very simple. And actually, I thought my memory of the post-credit scene was it was just that creature going through the
gotcha.
like kind of parking lot area. But I forgot that there was this whole moment with Thor coming back and kissing Jane, and then we see the monster.
I thought it was kind of strange
myself.
He just shows up and they just have a huge smooch.
Right.
And then it cuts to the creature.
And that was it. I guess it was just saying, hey, he's coming back. But it's funny because, as we go into...
I bet Natalie Portman was like, I want to kiss.
Right. We got to do one more scene.
For at least 30 seconds.
We'll make it a post-credit scene or something. It'll be fine.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa. You never know.
Yeah.
All right, John, I think it's time to rate the film. So what would you give Thor: The Dark World?
I will give it, after we talked about it, I might lower my rating. I did decide recently I was going to start becoming more strict, so I will continue with that, and I'm going to give it 2.5 stars out of 5.
That is exactly what I was going to give it, 2.5 stars. So I think we're kind of on the same page with this film. It's I don't think it's necessarily I was going to say when I was watching it, I didn't think it was necessarily a terrible film. I still don't think it's terrible.
Right.
But I do think
I wouldn't even say it's bad.
It's weak.
Yes,
I wouldn't say
that's
it's bad.
A good word.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would say it's probably the weakest Marvel film. For a long time, I thought that was Guardians 2. But once we rewatched
it... we just did it, and that was actually... we actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, we both enjoyed that movie more than I remembered enjoying it. And I wasn't sure, because I had only seen this one once. I wasn't sure if it was Incredible Hulk or Thor: The Dark World that kind of took the last spot out of the Marvel movies. And I think now, having rewatched this, and especially after talking with you about it, I think this definitely takes the last spot. I think I like Incredible Hulk more than this movie. So, yeah, 2.5 stars for me, I think, as well.
Cool.
Well, we'd love to know what you think about Thor: The Dark World. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can leave us a comment on Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM Podcast. You can leave us a comment on our Instagram or tweet at us. Both handles are Cinema Heroes. Or you can leave a comment on this video, of course. If you're watching it and you have enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you any way you want to reach out to us. But otherwise, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.